Instagram open. You see someone buying a house at 25. Scroll. Someone traveling to Bali for the 5th time this year. Scroll. Someone closing a 6-figure deal. And you feel, what? Motivation? Inspiration? No. You feel inadequacy. You feel that tightness in your chest, that voice whispering, why not me? Why them and not me? What's wrong with me? And in that exact moment, without realizing it, you just activated one of the most destructive blocks to your financial prosperity. You just fell into the comparison trap. Welcome to the second episode of The 7 Unconscious Blocks to Wealth. In the first episode, we talked about the inability to receive and how it blocks money from entering your life. Today, we're diving into something equally devastating but completely different in nature. The comparison that steals your joy, paralyzes your action, and ensures you'll never achieve real prosperity. And we're doing this through the deep lens of Carl Jung's psychology, exploring what he would call shadow projection and envy as a symptom of unintegrated parts of the self. Have you ever stopped to calculate how many times a day you compare yourself with other people? Probably not, because it happens so automatically, so unconsciously that you don't even notice. You open social media and immediately start a mental game of comparison. You see someone's success and automatically measure it against your own progress. You hear about a colleague's achievement and internally calculate whether you're ahead or behind. It's a habit so ingrained, so deeply installed in the modern American psyche, that it seems impossible not to do. But here's what you need to understand with total clarity. Comparison is not motivation. Comparison is not healthy aspiration. Comparison is pure poison for your prosperity. Carl Jung understood something profound about envy and comparison that most people completely ignore. When you look at another person and feel that pang of envy, that feeling of, why don't I have this? You're not really reacting to that person. You're reacting to a part of yourself that you rejected, that you threw into the shadow, that you don't allow to exist consciously. Jung would say you're projecting your shadow onto that person. And what you envy in them isn't really theirs. It's yours. It's a quality, a capacity, an ambition that exists within you but that you don't allow yourself to recognize or express. Let me give you a concrete example for this to make sense. Imagine you see someone on Instagram who is extremely ambitious, who openly talks about wanting to get rich, who pursues money unashamedly, maybe posting about their new Tesla, their real estate investments, their growing startup. And you feel a strange mix of envy and contempt. Must be nice to have rich parents, you think? Or, what a superficial person, only thinks about money, probably stepped on people to get there. But here's what Jung would say is really happening. You have ambition. You want financial success. But at some point in your life, maybe from parents who said money can't buy happiness, or rich people are greedy, or from a culture that shames open ambition, you learned that ambition is bad, that wanting money is wrong, that good people don't openly pursue wealth. So you pushed your ambition into the shadow. You rejected it. And now, when you see someone living that ambition you denied in yourself, you feel envy. Not of the person, but of their freedom to be what you don't allow yourself to be. And here's where it becomes devastating for your finances. While you're busy comparing, envying, analyzing why they have and you don't, you're not building anything. Your energy, which could be going to create, to act, to build your own prosperity, is completely drained in this useless process of comparison. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a giant hole in the bottom. No matter how much effort you put in, energy simply leaks through comparison. Let me tell you about Daniel. Daniel worked in tech in Seattle, was a competent software engineer, had good ideas, made around $95,000 a year. But Daniel had a habit that was destroying any chance of prosperity. He spent hours daily stalking successful people on LinkedIn and Instagram. Not to learn from them. To compare himself. He saw someone launch a SaaS product and immediately thought, why didn't I think of that? I could have done that. Saw someone get series of funding for their startup and thought, they only got it through connections, through going to Stanford, it's not fair. Saw someone posting about their $200,000 salary at a FANG company and thought, I work just as hard, why am I not there? The practical result? Daniel had dozens of project ideas that never got off paper. Because whenever he started something, he saw someone doing something similar or better, compared himself, got discouraged and abandoned it. 3 years passed like this. 3 years of unexecuted ideas, constant comparisons, energy completely wasted on envy. And financially, Daniel was in the exact same place. Actually worse, because his colleagues he envied so much had progressed, gotten promotions, started successful side projects, moved to better companies, while he remained paralyzed. It was only when Daniel started Jungian therapy that he understood what was happening. The therapist asked, what do you envy in these people? Daniel listed, Their courage to try, their ability to execute, their luck, their connections from good schools. The therapist then asked the question that changed everything. What if these weren't their qualities but your own qualities you're not claiming? What if the courage you envy is your own unexpressed courage? What if the ability to execute is your own ability you don't allow to flourish? What if you're using "they went to Stanford" as excuse to not try yourself? It was an emotional punch to the stomach. Daniel realized he didn't envy those people. He envied their freedom to be ambitious, courageous, risk-taking. Freedom he denied himself because deep down he carried beliefs like, people from state schools like me don't make it to that level, I'm not the lucky type, I don't have the right connections. He had thrown his ambition, his courage, his execution capacity into the shadow. And now projected these shadow qualities onto others, feeling envy instead of integration. Jung teaches us that when you project your shadow onto another person, when you see in them something that awakens strong emotional reaction, you have two choices. First choice: continue projecting, continue envying, continue comparing, continue paralyzed. Second choice: recognize the projection, withdraw it from the other person, look inward and ask, what does this say about me? What rejected part of mine is being mirrored here? The first choice keeps you trapped. The second choice liberates. But comparison isn't just about shadow projection. There's another equally destructive aspect. Comparison paralyzes action. Think about it. When you're comparing, you're focused on what others have or do. Your attention is completely outside yourself. And while your attention is out, you're not acting. You're analyzing, questioning, ruminating. Why them and not me? What do they have that I don't? Was it just luck or rich parents? Do they know people I don't? Will I ever make it? These questions seem important, seem like you're trying to understand something useful. But in reality they're completely useless. Because the answer to why do they have and I don't will never help you have what you want. The only useful question is, what am I going to do now? But you can't ask this question while trapped in the comparison trap. Your mental energy is all consumed trying to understand someone else's reality instead of creating your own reality. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah wanted to be a writer. Had real talent, interesting stories, good prose. But Sarah obsessively followed other writers on social media, especially those who seemed younger or less experienced but more successful. Saw someone publish a book at 23 and immediately compared herself. She's younger than me and already published 3 books. Saw someone get a 6-figure book deal and thought, I write just as well, why not me? Saw someone with a huge following selling lots of copies and ruminated, she only sells because she's pretty and has Instagram followers, it's not fair, it's not about the writing anymore. 3 years passed. Sarah didn't write any books. 0. Because she was too busy comparing herself with writers who had already published. Was too busy analyzing others' success instead of building her own. Her creative energy, which should be going to writing, was completely drained in constant comparison. And worst, the more she compared, the more inadequate she felt. The more inadequate she felt, the less she wrote. The less she wrote, the more she compared to try to understand what she was doing wrong. A perfect vicious cycle. The insight that changed everything for Sarah came when she read something from Jung about individuation. Jung said each person's path is unique. That you can't live another person's life. That comparison is fundamentally a denial of your own path. That your work isn't to be better than others. Your work is to become fully yourself. Sarah realized she would never be that writer she envied, the 23-year-old with a book deal, the Instagram influencer with thousands of followers. Because she wasn't that person. She was Sarah. With her own stories, her own voice, her own timing, her own journey. And the more she tried to be like others, the less she was herself. She stopped following other writers on social media. Deleted Instagram from her phone. Unfollowed the LinkedIn feeds of successful authors. And simply wrote. 6 months later, she had a complete manuscript. A year later, she had an agent. 18 months later, she had a book deal. 2 years later, she was making a living from writing. Not because she became better than others, but because she stopped comparing and started creating. Now let's talk about an aspect of comparison that's particularly cruel. You compare your beginning with their middle. You're at the start of your journey, stumbling, learning, making mistakes, figuring things out. And you look at someone who's years ahead and think, why am I not there? But you don't see their years of struggle. You don't see the failures, the rejections, the sleepless nights, the doubts, the fears, the times they almost quit. You only see the final result edited, filtered, presented in the best possible way on social media. It's like watching a movie and comparing yourself with the protagonist at the end of the story, when all problems were solved, when growth already happened, when success was achieved. You're in your first act, full of challenges and uncertainties, and compare yourself with someone who's already in the third act, in the resolution. It's a fundamentally unfair and completely useless comparison. Let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus was 30 and felt completely behind in life. Saw college classmates buying houses in expensive neighborhoods, having consolidated careers at Google and Goldman Sachs, traveling to Europe multiple times a year. And he thought, I'm a total failure, I'm so far behind. But here was the reality Marcus didn't see. That classmate who bought a $600,000 house at 28? Had started investing at 18 with $50,000 inheritance from grandmother's estate. That colleague with the Goldman Sachs VP position? Had done intensive networking since college through his dad's connections in finance, connections Marcus never had access to. That friend traveling constantly? Was working remotely for a company she'd joined 5 years ago when that was still rare. Marcus hadn't even known remote work was an option back then. Marcus was comparing his beginning in financial consciousness. He had only started seriously educating himself about money and career strategy at 28, with the results of journeys that started much earlier or in completely different circumstances. It was like entering a marathon at mile 15 and comparing yourself with people who started at mile 0. Of course they were ahead. But not because they were better runners. Just because they started earlier or had different advantages. The moment of clarity for Marcus came when he investigated the real story of a person he envied tremendously. A tech entrepreneur who seemed to have overnight success, with a startup that got acquired for $20 million. Marcus discovered that person had spent 7 years working in corporate tech learning the industry, had failed at 2 previous startups that went nowhere, had maxed out credit cards and lived with parents for years while building, had invested a decade of invisible work before the moment that seemed overnight success. It hadn't been luck. It hadn't been connections, though those helped. It had been a decade of work Marcus hadn't seen because he only knew the final, successful version. And here's another devastating aspect of comparison. It generates borrowed goals. When you're constantly comparing yourself with others, you start pursuing what they have instead of what you really want. You see someone with a Tesla and think, I need that car. But do you really want that car? Or do you want it because you saw someone else having it and it seemed like the marker of success? You see someone living in a fancy downtown loft and think, I need to live there. But do you really want to live there? Or is it because it seems to be what successful people do? Jung would say you're living the life of persona instead of the life of self. Persona is the social mask. It's who you think you should be based on external expectations and what you see others valuing. Self is who you really are, your authentic desires, your genuine needs. When you pursue borrowed goals through comparison, you're feeding persona and starving self. And ironically, even when you achieve these borrowed goals, you don't feel fulfilled. Because it wasn't what you really wanted. It was what you thought you should want based on what others have. Let me tell you about Tyler. Tyler worked in marketing in Austin, earned reasonably well at around $68,000, was building a stable life. But Tyler constantly saw on Instagram people with expensive cars, Range Rovers, Porsches, Mercedes, expensive trips, Maldives, Switzerland, Santorini, designer clothes and watches. And he thought, I need this, this is what success looks like in America. So Tyler started spending beyond his means. Leased a BMW that cost half his annual salary. Took expensive trips putting everything on credit cards, had to go to Tulum because everyone was posting from there. Bought designer sneakers and a Rolex on payment plan. Posted it all on Instagram to look successful. The result? Tyler was in serious debt. Constantly stressed about money. Working just to pay installments for things he bought to appear successful. And here's the worst, he wasn't even happy. That BMW he wanted so much was stressful because the lease payment crushed his budget. Those trips were stressful because he knew he was going deeper into debt. That Rolex sat in drawer because he felt guilty wearing it knowing what it cost. Tyler was living someone else's life. Pursuing success symbols he didn't even really value, he didn't actually care about cars or luxury watches. All because he was trapped in the comparison trap. It was only when he hit financial rock bottom, couldn't make rent, had to borrow from parents, faced credit card default, that he stopped and asked, what do I really want? And discovered, he wanted financial freedom. Wanted to eventually work less and spend time on music, his real passion. Wanted peace of mind with money. None of this had to do with luxury car or designer clothes. But he had never asked what he wanted. Had only copied what he saw others wanting on social media. Jung had a concept called individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, instead of who you think you should be based on society's expectations. And comparison is the exact opposite of individuation. Comparison is looking outward to define who you are and what you should want. Individuation is looking inward. Comparison is measuring your worth based on how you stack up against others. Individuation is recognizing your intrinsic worth independent of comparison. And here's something crucial. Synchronicity, this Jungian concept of meaningful coincidences that guide your life, only works when you're on your path. When you're living authentically, when you're pursuing what truly resonates with you, synchronicities appear. The right people appear at the right time. Opportunities arise in unexpected ways. But when you're living someone else's life through comparison, when you're pursuing borrowed goals, synchronicity is blocked. Because you're not on your path. You're trying to walk someone else's path. Now, let me give you the antidote to comparison. It's simple but profoundly difficult. Look inward instead of outward. Instead of asking, what do they have? Ask, what do I want? Instead of measuring your progress compared with others, measure your progress compared with who you were yesterday, last month, last year. Instead of envying others' qualities, recognize those same qualities in yourself and start developing them. When you feel envy of someone, instead of getting stuck in that feeling or trying to repress it, use it as a self-knowledge tool. Ask, what specifically do I envy in this person? What quality, capacity, or circumstance awakens this reaction? And then the crucial question, where does this quality exist in me but I don't allow it to flourish? Where does this capacity live in me but I reject it? What part of mine is being mirrored here? This is applied Jungian shadow integration. You take the projection, withdraw it from the external person, and recognize it in yourself. You transform envy from destructive feeling into growth tool. You stop comparing and start integrating. Let me tell you about Jessica because her story perfectly illustrates this transformation. Jessica was a digital content creator in Los Angeles, had a modest YouTube following of around 50,000 subscribers, earned some money through ads and sponsorships but not enough to live exclusively from it, maybe $2,500 a month, needing a part-time job to supplement. And she spent hours daily comparing herself with other YouTubers. Saw someone with 500K subscribers and felt inadequate. Saw someone land a major brand deal and felt envy. Saw someone's channel blow up overnight and thought, why not me? What do they have that I don't? The result? Jessica was in total burnout. Because she wasn't creating content based on what she genuinely wanted to share. She created based on what she saw working for others. Copied formats from trending channels, imitated styles of successful creators, chased the same brand partnerships everyone was chasing, used the same viral tactics. And nothing worked really well because it wasn't authentic. It wasn't hers. She was trying to be someone else. The turning point came when Jessica had an emotional breakdown, panic attacks, couldn't film anymore, questioned everything, and sought a Jungian therapist. The therapist gave an exercise. Every time you feel envy of another creator, instead of comparing, ask, what specifically do I envy? And then, where does this quality exist in me? At first, Jessica found the exercise pointless, but started doing it. Saw a creator with super authentic and vulnerable content about mental health struggles. Felt envy. Asked, I envy her courage to be vulnerable. Then, where do I have courage to be vulnerable but don't allow it? Realized, she had many personal stories about her own anxiety and depression she never shared because feared judgment. The courage was there, just unclaimed. Saw a creator with unique and striking visual aesthetic, dreamy, artistic style. Felt envy. Asked, I envy her creativity and originality. Then, where do I have creativity and originality but don't express? Realized, she always had artistic ideas but suppressed them because tried to do what works based on algorithm trends, copying what was proven successful for others. Gradually, Jessica stopped copying. Started creating from her authentic place. Shared vulnerable stories about mental health that she was afraid to share. Experimented with visual style that truly resonated with her artistic side, not what she saw working for others. Created content about topics she genuinely cared about, mental health, creativity, authentic living, not what she saw generating most views for trending channels. And something magical happened. Her audience started growing, slowly at first, then faster. Not because she was doing what works according to algorithm, but because she was being authentic, and authentic resonates. Better brand partnerships started appearing, not the ones everyone was chasing, but brands that aligned with her authentic message and paid better. Her work became enjoyable again, because it was no longer a constant struggle to be like others. Jessica had integrated what she was projecting. Had stopped envying qualities in others and started claiming those same qualities in herself. had stopped comparing and started individuating in the Jungian sense. And ironically, it was when she stopped chasing others' version of success that her own genuine success started appearing. Within 2 years, she hit 400K subscribers, was making $8,000 to $12,000 monthly from YouTube alone, had a Patreon bringing another $3,000, was financially stable doing work she loved. Jung would say Jessica had moved from persona imitation to self-expression. And the universe always rewards authenticity. Always. May not be in the way you expect. May not be in the timing you want. But when you stop living someone else's life and start living your own life, when you stop comparing and start creating, something aligns. Synchronicities appear. Opportunities arise. The path opens. And here's something that needs to be clearly said. Comparison steals joy because it steals authenticity. When you're constantly measuring your worth based on how you compare with others, you can never really appreciate your own journey. You can never celebrate your own victories because there's always someone who seems to be further ahead. You can never feel at peace with where you are because you're always looking at where others are. It's a form of self-imposed torture. You create an impossible ruler of satisfaction. Because no matter how much you achieve, there will always be someone with more. Always someone younger, more successful, richer, with better connections, more privileged. If your happiness depends on being ahead, in an imaginary race against everyone else, you'll never be happy. Because it's an impossible race to win. There's always someone ahead. But when you stop comparing, when you define success in your own terms, when you measure progress based on your own path and values, everything changes. You can genuinely celebrate each step forward. You can feel real gratitude for what you have. You can have peace with where you are while still working toward where you want to go. You recover joy. You recover the ability to appreciate your own journey. And financially, this makes all the difference. Because when you're no longer pursuing borrowed success symbols, the car, the house, the lifestyle you saw on Instagram, you stop spending on things that don't actually matter to you. When you're no longer trying to keep up with others, you stop making financial choices based on appearance and validation. When you're living authentically, you spend on things that truly bring value to your life, aligned with your values, not to impress others or prove success. Your financial decisions become aligned with your real values and desires. You invest in things that genuinely matter to you. You save for goals that truly resonate with who you are. You work on projects that authentically excite you, not because you saw someone else doing it and it seemed profitable or impressive. And ironically, it's in this state of authenticity, not comparison, that real prosperity happens. Now I want you to do something. Pause the video and think honestly, who do you compare yourself with most? What person or group of people awakens in you that feeling of, why not me? That mix of envy and inadequacy. Identify this clearly. And then ask, what specifically do I envy in them? Write it down. Be brutally honest. And now the transformative question. Where do these qualities I envy exist in me but I don't allow them to flourish? If you envy someone's courage, where do you have courage you don't express? If you envy creativity, where do you have creativity you suppress? If you envy financial success, what part of you capable of creating success are you rejecting or not claiming? This is the practice. Transform envy from poison into medicine. Use comparison not as a source of paralysis but as a mirror pointing to your unintegrated parts. Each time you feel that pang of envy, instead of getting stuck in it or trying to repress it, use it as an opportunity for self-knowledge and shadow integration. And then commit to one thing. 1 week without active comparison. Delete social media apps from your phone for 7 days. Don't check LinkedIn. Don't watch Instagram. Don't scroll TikTok or Facebook. Just stay with yourself, with your own thoughts, with your own goals and desires. And observe what happens. You'll probably feel anxiety at first. Because comparison has become an addiction, a compulsion. But as the withdrawal passes, you'll start hearing your own voice again. You'll start feeling what you really want, separate from what you think you should want based on what others have or what social media tells you success looks like. If this video resonated with you, if you recognized yourself in the comparison trap, I need you to do a few things. First, leave your like because it really helps more people find this vital content. Second, in the comments, answer honestly, who or what do you compare yourself with most? You don't need to give details if you don't want. But the act of naming already starts the process of taking the projection back, of reclaiming your power. And third, subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet. Because this is the second episode of The 7 Unconscious Blocks to Wealth. In the first episode we talked about the inability to receive. Today we talked about comparison. And next week we're going to talk about an equally powerful block. The more you try to control money, the less it comes. The fatal paradox of financial control. But until then, practice. Practice stopping comparing and starting to create. Practice transforming envy into self-knowledge. Practice integrating your own shadow qualities instead of projecting them onto others. Practice living your life instead of envying others' lives. Because here's the fundamental truth Jung spent his life trying to make people understand. Your path is unique. Completely unique. There's nobody who can live the life you came to live. There's nobody with your exact combination of talents, experiences, perspectives, challenges, background. Comparison is a denial of this uniqueness. It's an attempt to force your unique journey to fit into the mold of someone else's journey. And when you stop comparing, when you accept that your path is singular and yours alone, something profound happens. You liberate yourself. You stop wasting energy trying to be like others. And all that energy that was being drained in comparison, now it's available to create, to build, to manifest your own unique version of prosperity. Comparison steals your joy because it steals your authenticity. Comparison blocks your evolution because it keeps you focused on others' paths instead of your own. But when you reclaim your path, when you stop measuring your worth based on external comparison, when you start living from your authentic center, everything changes. Joy returns. Creativity flows naturally. And prosperity, real, sustainable prosperity aligned with who you truly are, finally becomes possible. You'll never have money if you keep comparing. Not because comparison makes you less capable, but because comparison keeps you living someone else's life instead of your own. And you can only prosper when you're living authentically, when you're creating from your center, when you're walking your own unique path. Stop comparing. Start creating. Your prosperity is waiting.
If this resonated with you, subscribe to the Shadow Dialogue and hit that like button. Your transformation starts with one click. See you in the next video.